Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that we meet on the land of the Kaurna people and to acknowledge them as the custodians of the land, and also to thank the Heritage Council for organising this event, which I think is a great innovation in itself. Okay, I'm going to use the screens a lot, so and I'm going to walk around. So you probably don't need to look at the front. You can swivel around to the screens. What I'm going to talk about is how contemporary digital technologies are giving us new opportunities to create heritage tourism experiences. So we've touched on the idea of experience, and I think this is really at the heart of what we're talking about today is what are the new experiences we need to create and how do we do that? So I'm going to talk about three things really, about heritage tourists. Who are they? What do they want and how do we serve them? Secondly, about heritage informatics. How do we make information available about heritage so that people can use it and enjoy it? And then thirdly, how do we use contemporary digital technologies to really enhance those heritage tourism experiences? And I know I'm really short of time because I know morning tea is coming up, so I'm going to work through this pretty quickly. Okay, some people say that no one cares about heritage anymore. I think the fact that we've got a full house today perhaps belies that. This is Zedward at Glenside, which when we opened it in 2014 for the public for the first time, we had a queue a mile long from there to Greenhill Road. So it shows that people are really interested in heritage. And as far as tourism goes, we actually know that tourism began with heritage. The European Grand Tour in the 19th century was really the first time that people on a large scale actually did tourism things. We talk about the Chinese tourism wave now, but really this is just an echo of the kind of waves we saw in the 19th century when middle class people had the time to go and wander around and look at interesting places. So a definition of heritage is always useful. I think a good broad one is heritage is the legacy of the past that we preserve for the future. So that can mean all kinds of things. Heritage tourism has been defined by the National Trust for Historic Preservation in the US as travelling to experience the places, artefacts and activities that authentically represent the stories and people of the past. I think that's really interesting in terms of the idea of authenticity. That's really one of the key things about heritage tourism is it's about the authentic experience. And we know, as Carolyn said earlier on, that heritage drives tourism. We know that these are different stats, but there's a similar point that Carolyn made about the number of people who visit heritage places, but also their significance in terms of what they spend and what they do. That we know they spend more, they stay longer, and they spend more and stay longer than arts tourists do. We often conflate arts tourism with heritage tourism. I think we need to differentiate them sometimes because heritage tourists are different, and as we can see there, they actually contribute more economically than any other group of tourists. So when we talk about heritage, we talk about the kind of heritage values Jane's talked about at Port Arthur, and I think these are the kind of things we mean when we talk about heritage. We talk about authenticity, quality, integrity, uniqueness, the idea of things being irreplaceable, telling stories, community, identity. These are all the kind of things that we think about when we think about heritage. When we think about heritage tourists, they have the following qualities. They tend to be curious, experimental, discerning, informed, passionate and knowledgeable. There's a good match here between the values we talk about with heritage and what heritage tourists are looking for and who they are. This is Ayres House on North Terrace. This is a typical day there with people coming and having a look at the grand state dining room there. And so this is, I suppose, our conventional idea about heritage tourism is people looking at fine old buildings. But as the Minister has suggested too, it's a bit more than that these days, and we should be thinking beyond just the house tour of a historic property. In South Australia, we have some of the best heritage brands in the country, arguably in the world. Grange, Maggie Beer, Coopers, Harndorf itself is a brand, Berenberg, Hagues, Tandanya is a great example of another kind of brand. So we're already steeped in heritage, as I think the Lord Mayor has reminded us too. But heritage is not just stuff. It's not just, as the Minister said as well, it's not just stuff. It's actually more than places, more than buildings, more than stuff. It's actually a process. That heritage is really about how people make meaning. And so The places and the stuff and the things and the traditions all help people make meaning about themselves, about their place in the world and the place in which they live, and about this place, whichever place we happen to be in. So we've got to think about heritage very broadly as a process, a psychological process, if you like, of making meaning. Doesn't mean we can't make money out of them making meaning, but it's really fundamentally not about the stuff. So when we think about the heritage experience, what's happening in this picture really is that people are using information around them, information they already have, and coming up with some new kind of construction. So the process is really quite dynamic. It's not really a matter of a didactic information download to people. It's really about how they create another identity, another experience for themselves by interacting with these things and these places. But technology is really reshaping that process of meaning making. So the ways in which we research heritage, the ways in which we preserve it, the ways in which we communicate, discover and share it are all changing very rapidly. And this is, I suppose, the conundrum that we have. And I like Jane's comment before that she doesn't do social media. That's a great, strong statement to make, because there's a lot of pressure on people to be using technology, and I think we can get carried away with technology, but we can't avoid it because it's really here to stay. But it's really changing the way we think about heritage and the way we present heritage. In the past, we've tended to use rather static ways of conveying significance to people. This is in Perth, where we're trying to tell people that there's something significant here about this place, about this person. In Adelaide, we're very good with our blue and white plaques on buildings. So this is where we're integrating information with the fabric of heritage places. We put them on signs. We put them on memorials, we put them on street signs. We're always kind of pointing, if you like, to the fabric. And the information is kind of built into these kind of structures. But that's what's really changing now, is that digital information means it's possible to attach information to places, to things, to experiences in very different ways. If you think about the Northern Lights on North Terrace, this is, I think, a nice example of the physical becoming virtual. So you've got this lovely projection on a heritage building, telling you a bit about what happens in that building and what might happen in that building in a playful kind of way. So for some people, technology is a nightmare. For some people, it's utopia. So some people will look at this picture and say, wow, I want to be there. And some people would think this is hell. So we tend to polarise around technology, and you may fall on either side of that spectrum, but basically, as I said, it's here and we need to learn how to navigate it. This is a nice example of a very improvised use of technology in Toronto, where they were putting up these, what they called sticky plaques. They're just attaching these plaques with QR codes around town to tell a story. This one's about where Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor got engaged. So what we're finding is that digital, social and mobile together, the combined impact of these is that place is more important than ever. So we're really actually redefining how we can talk about place, how we can share information about place through the use of these technologies. So what it means, this is a lovely shot about how people relate to art through their devices. So yeah. When we all saw the Mona Lisa for the first time decades ago, it's like people weren't doing that. And now this is how they're interacting with that most famous cultural heritage experience. Okay, so some of the technologies that we can talk about are websites, recommender services, things like TripAdvisor, really fundamental to tourism. Social platforms, we talked about social media, we'll talk a bit about that. Mobile apps, we believe that mobile apps are really well suited to heritage tourism, and we've been exploring those a bit. And then the whole thing about using spatial and geolocation technologies to actually connect information to place. Because we're really moving on from just the kind of information stage where people came and got stuff from a central point. It's now about relationships mediated through technology, added to by technology, not just about what I find a daunting kind of piece of technology, the old brochure rack. Where do you start? Where do you find what you want? What do you do with it? How do you reuse it? So hopefully we're moving beyond the brochure rack technology to things that are really mobile, instant, ephemeral. These technologies enable us to make information available to people when and where they want it in a way which is far more kind of far less labour intensive to create and to share. And what we're finding too is through social media, people do it themselves. People are telling their own heritage stories. This is from Instagram, where someone, I think a Japanese tourist at Hahndorf, is making her own, if you like, heritage statement. Someone else in Hahndorf made a different heritage statement about, Hahndorf food. So depending on what you're relating to, whether it's the stonework or whether it's to the hot dogs, it's now possible for people to tell their own heritage stories. And we need to allow that. We need to encourage that and support that. Looking too at artworks, because of the technologies we have now, like the Google Art Project, you can actually make the virtual hyper-real. So you can zoom in so close to one of these artworks now. You can see things that you would not see if you were even just standing close to it. So you can really start to see how the virtual and the physical are blurring in ways we haven't really fully imagined yet. So that's got a lot of implications and opportunities for us. Some of the technologies, QR codes, geocaching, where you can actually find, if you like, bits of heritage information, and iBeacons, where information may be pushed at you depending on where you're standing. So you could be standing that corner of the room and get a different piece of information to if you're standing in that corner of the room. So it's kind of customising around place and space. But video is king, I think, in this new information world. This is from our Adelaide City Explorer app, where we did a music trail.
This is the Grace Emily, and it's got the most beautiful warm atmosphere here. When you walk in, it's got really beautiful decor. It's got all sorts of kitsch decorations. It's got paintings of bullfighters, and it's got plastic Jesus, and it's got aliens, and there's a lamp that's got anvils on it, and such an amazing collection of objects that you feel like you've walked into an art lounge room or something like that. It's warm and good. This is a good pub, the Grace Emily, for not having any pokies and for always encouraging bands to play and paying the musicians properly. And as a band venue, it's fantastic. It's got a tiny little stage, but people cram on there and play and no problem. They have this really good thing where on Friday nights they have a residency, so a band can get every Friday night for a whole month, and they'll play with different support acts. And they'll let young bands have a go. And so it's one of the few places left where you don't have to have a name really, you can get that residency.
Okay, so you get the flavour. Is it culture? Is it heritage? We'd say both. And basically the Grace Emily Hotel was one of the venues on the trail we did for the Fringe, for the music element of the Fringe. So it's getting people to go and explore these venues, go and have an experience, a cultural experience at somewhere like the Grace Emily. I think you might have to exit out of that. You might have to press escape to get out of the video. Yep, thanks. Okay, and then once again, social viral sharing. It's a fantastic way to multiply people's experience back to other people through their social networks. At the Miss Fisher costume exhibition we had at Ayers House over the summer, people were using Instagram to share their own kind of experiences at the exhibition. So when people start doing that, they start making their own interpretation of what was important, what was fun, and they share it with their friends, and that gets shared on as well. So the potential for social media to multiply people's experience is hard to overestimate. But sometimes these new technologies don't quite work out. This is Google Glass, Sergey Brin from Google, which I think we might conclude wasn't actually a great success as a technology. So there are technologies that hold great promise. Google Glass was very hyped, but we're kind of considering now that maybe it didn't quite work out because they didn't think about the social context in which people use technology. It might be great from a geek point of view, but people were really creeped out by these people wearing these headsets and having cameras and video players. So yeah, you've always got to think about the social context of any technology. So summary of the revolution so far, we're reinventing tourism marketing, signage, brochures, relationships and experiences. And this should make heritage more visible, accessible and engaging. I want to talk about a project we've been doing in partnership with the Adelaide City Council the last few years. It's really taken the idea of a walking tour and turning it into a digital experience. As the Lord Mayor said, William Light gave us a great gift. It's a great walking city. Adelaide's perfect for walking, even down to the scale of the blocks that he designed are perfect for walking. So we've developed a whole range of ways to find your Adelaide through Adelaide City Explorer. And it involves basically stories around place and then connecting those into trails. So they become walking trails that you can take through the city. and that's been working really well. It's interesting how when we think about the old ways we did signage and telling stories about place, the very heavy kind of plaque-based information sharing is really what we're moving away from, because we want to know more than what a plaque can ever tell you. We want to know, who were these people, Is that other building still around, What other buildings did this architect design? The plaque can't give you all that. Your plaque can't talk back, and you can't talk back to the plaque. So we're trying to look at the ways in which these new technologies enable those plaques to be more intelligent and to tell you more stories and to let you tell your stories back to the plaque. So we encourage people to download it, to use it. We're doing lots of walks based on the trails in the website and mobile app at the moment. We're integrating with the new signage that the council's put around town to actually, once again, to close the loop between the digital and the physical signage about heritage places. And we're doing guided walks, mostly from Ayers House, where people can actually walk these trails as well. So it's this whole thing about building these technologies together, the guided walk, the self-guided walk, the signage, all these things need to interplay together. Another example of a mobile app we've done is for the town of Wollonga, which has, I think, about 52 heritage places, where this is actually a mobile app as well. It goes from a pub like this that used to have a sign like that, telling you about its history, to something like this that you can scan with a QR code, get access to a whole lot of information and rich media about the place as well. So we've organised a couple of tours around the town. This tells you, the loop you're going to take. You can find those points. You can shortcut if you want to just go and find one or two places, or you can take the whole circuit. And then when you get into the individual place, you've got audio, you can have video, you've got photographs. The whole story is there for you as you wander around the town. And obviously you can have it on an iPad, which works quite well, or you can have it on a mobile phone. We did a trail last year about Mary MacKillop's sites in the city, and we were very fortunate to get an eye blessing for that trail. So the app has been blessed, if anyone is concerned about its integrity. I sometimes find people a bit sceptical about apps, and there are app believers and there are app skeptics, and that's always going to be the case probably. But if you look at the app usage data, and this is old data I have to say, you can see the skew that basically people under 45, 80 to 90 is probably higher than that now, are actual mobile phone users. That's the left graphic. And then on the right-hand side, you have mobile use graphic. So, it's app usage. So the 18 to 24 group at that stage, 83% of them were using apps. And I'd say you'd probably find now that it's probably up to that level, say 80% for most people under 50. So there's a kind of a tipping point where these technologies become just part of what we do. So I'm not going to ask you which side of the app divide you're on, but you can see where the trend's going. And there are apps for all kinds of things too. So apps for work, rest and play, gaming apps are very popular. But all these things, if you think about it, they could all be used to share heritage information. So they don't have to be strictly social networking. It can be like we saw with Instagram, people sharing an exhibition experience. Now, if there's one thing that you take away from this presentation, this should be it. What I've tried to show here is when we talk about the digital revolution, it's not just one revolution, it's actually multiple revolutions that are happening in the way we actually create and share information. So each of these quadrants, if you like, is a set of revolutions or technologies that are actually changing rapidly. So we've got storage technologies in the top left, we've got connecting technologies in the top right, the lower left presentation technologies, and bottom right device technologies. So all of these areas are continually innovating, continually doing new and quite amazing things. But what is the real revolution is the way these things join up. So a storage technology enables a new connecting process, enables a new device, enables you to present, if you like, 3D material or augmented reality. So all of these things are changing all the time. It's not just a single revolution, it's wave upon wave of technological revolutions. So that makes it hard to kind of keep up because these things are changing all the time. But it's really important when you're thinking about how to tackle it, you think about these, if you like, different quadrants and how each of them might be relevant or how you might use one of them better in whatever you're planning to do. So the recipe for complex times is that you need to experiment, as the Lord Mayor said, you need to collaborate and ask questions. Really, I think today could be a great day for asking lots of really good questions about what can we do, why should we do it, okay, and think long term and build quickly.